Okay. I'll just walk up and introduce myself, and then I'll... Okay. Good morning. I'm Len Magruder with the National Vietnam Veterans Review.
Alfred Fernandez.
Alfred Fernandez.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Fernandez, last June in Chicago, the vets had a protest in Grant Park, and they carried this sign. And as you can see, it said the media and campus lied about Vietnam. So I'm interviewing vets here in Houston to see how they feel about these two subjects. How do you feel about the performance of the American television news, the media, in reporting the Vietnam War?
Well, all in all, everyone keeps saying the truth was never brought out right during the war, and now all of a sudden it's all coming out. Myself, at the time I served, I was a 19-year-old young man. You know, I wasn't really too much into watching television, the news media, and what have you, although I had relatives that were at the war at the time. I come from a family of several veterans, and we're not super patriotic, but we are patriotic, so we always look to it as this is something my country called upon me, I had to go. Now, anything else that was said or done, you know, Jane Fonda went out there and did this and all this, but to me, the media was simply doing their job. You know, they showed what they wanted to show. Of course, big dollars controls a lot of things, you know, and who knows, maybe it controlled the media. I'm not one to say.
Well, you remember the Tet Offensive, right?
Yes, I do. And I did.
Well, there are a lot of history books now that are saying that the media reported the Tet Offensive as a strategic loss, as a defeat, when in actual fact it was a strategic victory. Wouldn't that be a serious thing if they did that?
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Had you ever heard that they had distorted the truth about that?
No, as a matter of fact, I never had it, because when I arrived in Vietnam, the Tet Offensive had just been over, and all the morale there among the men, to me, was kind of high. They were pumped up because they felt a victory, you know.
Well, it was a victory, but that's not the way it was reported in the media, and there have been a couple of television films on that. You mentioned Jane Fonda. How do you feel about the campus protests, the war protests?
Well, now that hurt me quite a bit. When I arrived home on New Year's Day in 1971 rather, January 1st, and I landed in Oakland, Travis Air Force Base, I believe it is. And I tried to get a flight out of San Francisco, and arriving there at San Francisco Airport, along with a couple other GIs that were with me in the cab, we come across a bunch of hippies, and they're yelling at us, Richard Nixon's hired guns, and all their little things, you know, and I couldn't believe it, and they all looked educated, like college boys and girls do, you know. And I just couldn't see, they were more or less my age. How come they didn't have that same feeling of patriotism, of want to go do our job that I had, you know? Yeah. And then a lot of people used to say, well, it's your lack of education. I go, well, you know, do I need a college education to do this? You know, what they're doing? I'm not going to do that.
That's a good point.
You know, I'm not going to do that.
Wait, Mike, you're a brother. Okay, come on. You gentlemen just move a little bit closer. I'm going to ask you, how do you feel about the war protesters?
Same as I felt when I was over in Nazi.
Hey, Mikey. They suck, huh?
Right on.
They didn't do any great favors.
They did shit.
Right on.
Okay.
They thought they were helping you out.
They were helping themselves out. All they was worried about was themselves. And themselves not going to Vietnam. And the people who served in Vietnam, they could give jack shit about. And that stinks. When a country turns its mind and its body against the veterans that fought a war for that country, that stinks.
How about you, sir? What do you think?
I think they're the lowest form of life there is.
There it is, Mike.
Who the hell are they to protest me?
There it is.
Who are they?
There it is.
You know? And especially Jane Fonda.
All right.
And Lloyd
Jane.
James.
There we go.
And Lloyd James.
I don't even hate the BC as much as I hate that bitch.
Exactly.
About the war protesters. Jane Fonda and those people. Abby Hoffman, Jerry Rubin, Dave Dillinger. Those are some of the leaders.
Well, how do I, this is not,
Upset you, huh?
you know, To me, I'm sure, I feel that they had a right to voice their opinion in the way they did, but to answer and not be there is another story.
Right.
I mean, if they were to be there and then they turned around and said, well, hey, this isn't right, then they had a right to speak their opinion. As far as Jane Fonda, she should have stayed in Hanley. That was the lowest thing that I had ever seen in the face of this earth.
It must have been demoralizing, wasn't it, for the troops over there?
How about humiliating,
Humiliating,
insulting,
insulting,
degrading?
degrading, what the war protesters did, and Jane Fonda.
It hurt.
Well, they thought they were doing you a favor. They thought they were bringing you back home. But they weren't, were they?
How does it make you feel better to sit there and watch the support of your country saying you're wrong when you're there?
Right. And most of you believed in what you were doing, didn't you?
I still to this day believe Mom and apple pie and red, white, and blue.
Right. But I mean, you believed in the that you were stopping communist aggression over there, right?
I felt at first I was stopping communist aggression.
Then what?
Later on, I thought all I was just a police action.
That was after we started withdrawing. It was a police action after that, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah. I hear that troops would occasionally find in Viet Cong strongholds, they would find contributions of blood and medical supplies from the University of California and various universities. That must have been shocking to the troops.
God. Yeah, I remember that.
Remember that?
Yeah. And you feel like you're defeating the purpose of even being there, is what it boils down to.
Yeah.
I mean, you go out there and you fight, and you find stuff in your own country, and they're strongholds.
And do you consider these people to have been well informed on the war?
No.
They didn't know what they were talking about.
How can you be well informed in a war when you ain't even there?
That's right. Well, you know, they said it was just a civil war, the Ho Chi Minh was just a nationalist, that there was no domino theory. I mean, their view of the war, hell, it was almost a Hanoi lobby. In fact, they actually carried the flag of the Viet Cong. Whose side were they on?
My feelings, they were on their side.
They're on their side.
You know, they say all this, okay, and they say that what we did was wrong. But take a look at the loss of lives that are there today.
That's right. Look at the boat people. Look at Cambodia.
Look at
South
Laos.
Vietnam. Look at Laos.
I used to work with the Hmong. I have a Hmong living next door to me. How would a person feel that here is a person with a land that no longer can go back?
Only